Ladies and gentlemen, we have our next session, which is basically on the U.S. cannabis and hemp legal and regulatory overview. And to do that, we have with us a wonderful speaker all the way from the United States, Joy Beckerman, who's with the U.S. Hemp Roundtable. And she is an internationally renowned hemp policy expert and public speaker involved in the hemp and cannabis movement for over 30 years now. She is also the principal at Hemp International, a consulting and legal support company. And she's also served as the director of regulatory affairs and legal affairs of Zilis, which she's doing now. And she's an international leader in superior quality hemp extract and CBD products. That's the company Zilis, what they do. So without taking much time into the introductions, I would let Joy do the introduction for you all. Joy, I hand over the stage to you. I'll be backstage if you need me. So please start your session. Thank you for being with us today.
Such a pleasure, such an honor. Thank you so much. Wonderful. This International Hemp Summit 2021. I'm hoping to give you some very valuable information on what's going on here in the United States, guys. I'm going to start by sharing my screen. Here we go. Excellent. We just want to start the show. There we go, folks. Very quickly, Sarfraz, you did a wonderful job. I don't like to spend a ton of time. I've been in hemp for 30 years, my goodness, and do a whole bunch of things, and some lists, a list of certain titles that I have are here. It goes on, and it gets pretentious after a while. So let's just get right into it, why you're here joining us today. Now, this is an overview on cannabis and hemp, but this is the International Hemp Summit, so we're going to focus primarily on hemp, but I don't want to disappoint, and I do want to give you some information about where we're at with medical and adult use cannabis here in the United States. As of May 18th, we had 36 states, four territories, and the Washington, D.C., which is not a state, allow for medical cannabis. And then as of June 22, we had 18 states, 2 territories, and the District of Columbia does not have medical use, they just have adult. So we have sort of this patchwork of legalization of adult or medical cannabis in the United States, and nothing at the federal level, though we have some active bills, and we'll talk about those in a few slides. So getting right into where we're at in the United States for hemp is in 2014, we have farm bills in the United States that pass every 5 years. Sometimes they don't agree, and so it takes a little extra time. So you're seeing sort of only 4 years between what we're calling these farm bills, but every 5 years are these bills that have to do with agriculture, and there are a lot of other aspects wrapped up in those bills as well, such as our food stamps and social welfare programs that are wrapped up into the farm bills. But in any event, what really started the reemergence of the crop in the United States was the 2014 Farm Bill, which legalized hemp through agricultural pilot programs. And agricultural pilot programs were defined as to study the growth, cultivation, and marketing of hemp. Had to be in conjunction with either a university or under your state Department of Agriculture. Only in states that permitted the cultivation of hemp. So just because the feds allowed that didn't mean that all the states automatically did it. All of the states have to pass their own laws in order to take advantage of that law. So in 2018, the very next farm bill, we'd started to gain some traction, mostly around hemp extract varieties, which has really became a saturated market. In the 2018 Farm Bill, we legalized hemp as an agricultural commodity, so brought it beyond research, beyond these agricultural pilot programs, and hemp in the United States has reclaimed its place in the broad light of day among all of America's other legal agricultural commodities. Of course, we're still reeling with all kinds of rulemaking and regulations that come with all of the federal allowances now. Bear in mind that still, like everything else, our Constitution for the United States allows for states' rights. So states do not have to take advantage of any of the rights that the federal government gives to them, but they all have. We now have 50 states that have all passed some form of legislation to allow for the cultivation of hemp in the United States. Now, at the federal level, we have, of course, the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration. They are supposed to be completely out of hemp. There was no mention of the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration in the entire Farm Bill. The only mention, of course, was the U.S. Department of Agriculture and our U.S. Food and Drug Administration. But the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration still wants to, it's almost like it's addicted to prohibition. It's just the DEA has an addiction and it's addicted to prohibition, people. And so they have put forth an interim final rule that states, and it's been pulled back a little bit, but there was a lot of public comments, but we're in sort of a holding pattern while the DEA attempts to continue to assert its authority over the crop for what we would call in-process hemp extract. So of course, we've got these three types of hemp: oil seed, fiber, and hemp extract. And it's the hemp extract varieties. They're going to probably take up all the air in the room and will consume most of this presentation, even though oil seed and fiber is so truly where my heart is. And it certainly is where the economic stability and the environmental stability that we all want, that's where those industries will bring us, through oil seed and fiber, where those trillion-dollar industries are. However, it's CBD and hemp extract that we're learning. So many folks are learning about the other aspects of hemp through these hemp extract varieties. Well, we can put in legal hemp. We define hemp is defined here as any part of the plant, Cannabis sativa L, whether growing or not, that does not contain greater than 0.3% THC, inclusive of the derivatives, extracts, compounds, isomers, salts of isomers, etc., and the seeds. Every part of the plant, as long as it does not contain greater than 0.3% delta-9 THC. Well, when we're creating these extracts, we put legal hemp into the extraction machine, but what comes out? Concentration is germane to extraction. So the pesticides are going to be, concentrated. The THC is going to be concentrated. So what happens is you put legal hemp into the extraction machine, but what comes out is usually spiked above 0.3. It always is generally spiked above 0.3. Now that, of course, THC is remediated and diluted and not entered into the stream of commerce to retail customers, because the finished product, of course, cannot exceed 0.3% THC. The DEA has asserted that that material that comes out, that in-process hemp extract that comes out initially of the extraction machine, that does not enter the stream of commerce to the retail customer, they're calling that marijuana. They're attempting to call that marijuana and say that is a controlled substance, which is just a nightmare on so many levels, particularly a tax level, a regulatory level. So we're not going backwards and to allow the DEA to take that over. But in any event, that's in a holding pattern. U.S. Department of Agriculture, primary regulator for states and territories that don't want to govern their own hemp program. And the USDA actually must approve all of the state plans and territory plans for hemp. That's in our law. Our U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration, we're certainly going to talk about governing, of course, food and beverage, drugs, dietary supplements, and cosmetics. But before we get completely immersed into hemp extract, let's talk for a minute about what makes my heart sing so much. And believe me, CBD does too, but I am an oil seed and fiber gal who sings the song of hemp extract as we move about the cabin, really delivering on the promise of hemp. So hemp building materials. This is, again, animal bedding, hempcrete, and hemp hurd as aggregate for construction materials. This is where we're really going to get some economic stability and start to drive these industrial markets for hemp. So we have the U.S. Hemp Building Association. Their certifications committee has been working diligently with ASTM. I'm sure many of you are aware of ASTM, the American Society for Testing and Materials, and I know Darwin Millard has presented today here at the International Hemp Summit. But their hemp subcommittee and the U.S. Hemp Building Association is working to raise funds and create a process application to submit to the International Code Council, ICC as it were, for a hempcrete process approval. Standards are everything. It's what will drive the market. So that's a major thing that we're working on right now. Of course, there are no standards in the United States yet or internationally for hempcrete or other hemp building materials. Hempcrete, of course, being a construction infill, an insulation, it's non-structural. You would still need timber or steel framing or some other interesting biocomposite framing that they're inventing these days. But it is a mold, rot, fire, and pest resistant construction infill that, depending on how close you are to the equator or a pole, and you would have either a 6 to 12 or maybe even 18-inch wall, depending on how close you are to those extreme temperatures. But under those conditions, with very good windows, you would keep your home at about 60 degrees an interior ambient temperature, 60 degrees Fahrenheit year-round without a heating or cooling system. It lasts for hundreds of years. Again, it's non-combustible, so we're really talking about hempcrete just really being revolutionary. Hemp animal feed, another thing that is going to help stabilize the supply chain and the market, because we've got hemp seed oil is a great market here. I am part owner of Colorado Hemp Works, which is our America's first post-prohibition hemp grain processing facility. Those hemp seed oil presses are going all the time, 24 hours a day. But what is left over is that seed cake. And we can mill protein powder, wonderful protein powder, but the market for protein powder, for hemp protein powder for humans, isn't really there yet. So what's happening is that seed cake left over from the hemp oil presses is piling up, and it can change the world for ag feed and pet feed. But we do not have a single ingredient approved yet in the United States. The EU, the European Union, very far ahead of us here. In the United States, we do not have a single hemp feed, animal feed ingredient approved yet, not a single one. And there must be an application submitted for each ingredient for each species. So we are talking about just a huge job that is in front of us. Here in the United States, we have something called the Hemp Feed Coalition. Oh, I've misspelled it here it says Hemp Feed HFC. The Hemp Feed Coalition, which we call the HFC. And in February of this year, February 2021, the Hemp Feed Coalition submitted the very first application ever in the United States. And they sent that to AFCO, which is the American Feed Control Officials, Association of American Feed Control Officials, and the FDA Center for Veterinary Medicine to allow hemp seed meal and cake to be legally used as commercial feed for laying hens. So, and that was a tremendous undertaking. I'm talking academics, for-profits, nonprofits, hundreds of thousands of dollars, all in all, with the research and the application fees and all of that, just to get the one ingredient, the hemp seed meal and cake, for the one species, for poultry, essentially, for laying hens. So that's where we're at with hemp feed, guys. We're at the beginning. Now let's talk about hemp extract, and that will most likely take over the rest of this presentation, because it is where we have, I want to give you the most valuable regulatory and law update that I can, and that's where all of the big movement is right now. So the FDA, our Food and Drug Administration here, if you are in the United States, and you are ingested by humans through the mouth, you can be one of three things. You can be a food and beverage, you can be a dietary supplement, or you can be a drug. You're one of these three things. They're all incredibly highly regulated, and they're all regulated by the FDA. Safety must be proven. So right now, and there is and I've got some links there at the bottom of the screen, guys. Right now on the FDA, they have an FAQ page called Cannabis and Cannabis-derived products. Google that alone and you'll get right to the page. And here's a question. Can THC or CBD products be sold as dietary supplements? What does the FDA say? No. They say no, and I'll tell you why. Essentially, we have something here called the IND, Investigational New Drug Preclusion. That's what we call it. But IND is Investigational New Drug. NDI is New Dietary Ingredient. ODI is Old Dietary Ingredient. Without getting too in the weeds here or too complex, what I'll say is, if the food was already in the food supply or marketed as a dietary supplement prior to October 15th, 1994, it's an ODI. It's an old dietary ingredient. And we would be able to put it into the food supply. However, it is the FDA's position that CBD and that no other hemp, not just CBD, but really any other extract of hemp or cannabinoid of hemp, has not been in the food supply or marketed as a dietary supplement prior to October 15th, 1994. That makes it an NDI, a new dietary ingredient. However, because of this section here on the screen within our Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act, there is something called an Ind Preclusion, and that means when a substance doesn't meet all of those elements that I just discussed, and somebody has either published, we'll say here, has been authorized for investigation as a new drug, if that substance has been authorized for investigation as a new drug for which substantial clinical investigations have been instituted, and for which the existence of such investigations has made public, then that substance is now no longer eligible to be an NDI, to be a new dietary ingredient, because of this investigational new drug status. Well, in this case, we're talking about GW Pharmaceuticals, Epidiolex, which of course is an isolated cannabidiol CBD derived from marijuana, but the bottom line is they went for the investigational new drug, they made the clinical research public, and that drug was approved. So that's the FDA's guidance position, and we're just about to talk about what that really means in real life. Now, it also says, of course, on that FAQ, will the FDA take action against cannabis or cannabis-related products that are in violation of this? What is the FDA going to do? The reality is, and they say, basically, we send warning letters. Like all enforcement, it comes down to the resources to perform the enforcement, and also the risk of public harm. And there's just not a lot of risk of public harm with CBD. So between that and a lack of resource for enforcement, the only thing that's happened thus far since February of 2015, so 6 years and some months now, only 67 warning letters have been issued by the FDA, mostly for major claims, massive medical claims, which you're not allowed to make any disease claims or health claims for dietary supplements in the United States. So having said that, the CBD industry's informed opinion is the FDA's guidance is just that. It's just guidance. It's not the law. And the fact that they say CBD may not be marketed as a dietary supplement or a food, we find that to be inaccurate because it's never been determined by the courts to be valid. It's neither final nor legally binding, their guidance, and neither their statements, their press releases, their congressional testimony, their guidance, their website, whatever it is, or the 67 warning letters are final agency actions or determinations. Should that happen, that would change everything. Now, meanwhile, the FDA is in an open rulemaking framework right now, trying to create a regulatory framework for CBD, but they haven't done it yet. So what has that done? That has left the 50 states to figure out what the heck they're going to do with CBD on their own. And the states have no experience regulating botanical extracts. The FDA is who regulates botanical extracts. So now what's happened is we've got the states all of a sudden creating little mini food and drug laws just for CBD and just for hemp extract. And by the way, just because these things have been liberated at the federal level, cannabinoids and derivatives, does not mean that all 50 states, once again, have taken advantage of that. So we've got sort of this patchwork framework, which is, can you imagine? And I work for an international dietary supplement company, but these multi-state operators, there are varying testing and labeling laws. There are some states you have to register your products and get a license or a permit to distribute your products in that state. I think so far we've got I think it's somewhere around 11 states. It is 11 states where you either have some combination of registering your product or having to get a license or a permit. All of these things come with fees, but other states that don't require these things. So it's just nearly untenable to navigate, but job security for me, because that is where my expertise lies, is in these very rapidly developing, ever-evolving landscape of regulations. Now, another little update here is that what we see, we're getting a heads up. Now, dietary supplements in general for the Food Drug Administration here in the United States is really their pet peeve. They're very skeptical about dietary supplements, the FDA. They don't like them. And in fact, their current guidance for the industry, and we see here the old title, but that's what's current right now. It's called Dietary Supplements, New Dietary Ingredient Notifications and Related Issues Guidance for the Industry. It's still in draft form. They've never updated it since October 2016, but that's what the dietary supplement industry has to go by. Now, I want you to know that this NDI situation right now, they're saying we're not even entertaining. The FDI is saying we're not even entertaining new dietary ingredient notifications for CBD because we maintain that it's not eligible because of the IND, the Investigational New Drug Preclusion. So we're trying to pass laws, which we'll see in a moment, that forces the FDA to allow CBD to avail itself and other hemp extract, all the cannabinoids from hemp, to avail themselves of the new dietary ingredient notifications and there's other avenues for us too, which is self-GRAS, which is getting a generally recognized as safe. That's what GRAS, GRAS stands for, generally recognized as safe determination. Now, these, particularly the NDI, costs a lot of money per ingredient. And if you change your formula, you've got a new ingredient. It takes about 12 to 18 months with all the toxicology studies, the manuscripts, etc. Somewhere between $280,000 and $320,000 per ingredient. Once again, 12 to 18 months. Now, the new they just recently published a list, the FDA, of different guidance documents that they intend to have finished by this time next year, about June 2022, the end of June 2022. The new title of the document that we're still using, the draft document that the dietary supplement world industry in the US is still using, is going to be called, according to the list they just published, and the link is down below, is going to be called Policy Regarding Certain New Dietary Ingredients and Dietary Supplements Subject to the Requirement for Pre-Market Notifications, Draft Guidance for the Industry. So they're already saying it's still going to be in draft form even a year from now. Just crazy. But what it looks like, and stay tuned, is that they're really going to start putting extra requirements on CBD and hemp extract. We don't know that from the title. I happen to know that in our informed opinions in the nonprofits that I work with, and certainly the U.S. Hemp Roundtable, really our nation's leading advocacy for the hemp industry, advocacy group for the hemp industry, and particularly as it relates to these dietary supplements. We just happen to know this because the bills that we have in Congress, and we have done those bills in conjunction with our dietary supplement and other hemp industry coalition partners, the FDA has railed against them and said, no, Congress, do not force us. We want to make sure that CBD is safe, despite the World Health Organization declaring it safe, despite overwhelming evidence that it is safe. They continue to stick their heels in the ground and say, don't force us to allow this substance to be let loose on the United States citizenry, because we're concerned that it's not safe. I'm concerned about their concern at this point. Active federal bills, and I'll go very, very quickly. We've got 2 bills right now in Congress, again, trying to get the FDA to allow hemp and hemp-derived CBD to move around the IND preclusion, to make an exception to the IND preclusion, to allow the substances to be marketed as dietary supplements and food additives. We've also got the Safe Banking Act, which is a Secure and Fair Enforcement Banking Act, because of the FDA saying that these CBD and hemp extract products cannot be marketed as a dietary supplement or a food. That's causing banks and insurers and other people to step back and not provide banking and financial services to farmers, to companies. It's in complete contravention of the legislative intent of the Farm Bill. So we've got that bill as well. Just last week, the Cannabis Administration and Opportunity Opportunity Act was filed at the federal level. This is for the legalization of adult use and medical cannabis, but it also with heavy, heavy focus on social justice and equity for people of color and indigenous communities who have been disproportionately affected by the war on drugs, the failed war on drugs here in the United States. But there is an aspect of the CAOA, the Cannabis Administration and Opportunity Act, that addresses this issue of CBD and new dietary ingredient notifications. And we've got some trouble there. Finally, at the federal level, we've got something called the Hemp Act, the Hemp Economic Mobilization Plan Act, and that seeks to allow THC levels to be increased in hemp from 0.3% to 1%, along with some other issues that you see here on the screen. We would advocate against raising THC in finished products, absolutely, to 1%, because at 0.3%, understand that you're already talking about allowing 3,000 parts per million of Delta 9 THC at 0.3%. If you bring finished products up to 1%, you're now allowing 10,000 parts per million THC into these finished products. There's already a potential for intoxication in a bulk product at the 0.3%, and we would prefer for those intoxicating aspects of the plant to be moved into that medical and adult use cannabis market. The legislative intent of legalizing hemp here in the United States was not for intoxication. That would be in contravention of the legislative intent. So we have this great need for standardization around the world. We share this with all of the different countries, of course, who are legalizing hemp and who have legalized hemp. And we have Canada and the European Union, of course, led the way for decades now, but we've got state definitions. We have U.S. Hemp Authority definitions. We have American Herbal Products Association definitions, ASTM. I mean, we need standardization. It's time for the world to get together and make all of this work. Finally, just a cautionary tale as I wrap up here. Be aware that we've got in the United States here that wonderful definition, and I don't want to go back on that definition. The definition that is legalized here in the United States at the federal level, it states that hemp includes all of its compounds, extracts, derivatives, isomers, and salts of isomers. Of course, sometimes the law happens and then science and the free market does what it does based on what the law allows. And then the law has to catch up for a minute because there was something happened that was unanticipated. And that has certainly happened here with Delta 8. Tetrahydrocannabinol, which has an intoxicating potential. We see how very close it is to Delta 9 in the picture on the screen there. But bear in mind that it's really Delta 8 is in fairly infinitesimal amounts within the plant in terms of naturally occurring. And the legislative intent was for naturally occurring cannabinoids, and also that they would be non-intoxicating. Well, we have had such a horrible, just ridiculous oversupply, a glut of hemp extract varieties and biomass, of CBD. We have, things, 55-gallon drums sitting around still from the 2018 harvest. So folks decided, what can we do with this? We're trying to save our businesses. We've got this valuable extract. It can't be sold because the market is saturated, but CBD can be converted through isomerization to Delta 8 THC. So we're starting to see these synthetic or isomerized Delta 8 products coming from CBD out in the market. Many of them in packaging that is attractive to children, in forms such as gummy bears or animals that are attractive to children, being marketed for their intoxicating value, unregulated, residual solvents left over in the final product, really a public harm risk, on top of the fact that we have no data, not even on rodents, much less humans, really on what these isomerized synthetic forms of Delta 8 coming from CBD, what they do in the human body. So it's really a public harm concern, and many states have moved to regulate or otherwise ban Delta 8 THC, to pull back on that public health concern. And we do believe that the FDA, and this is going to cause yet more problems, the FDA is already dragging its feet for years now on creating a regulatory framework just for the one cannabinoid, CBD, and here we're already creating these situations in the United States. So I am not a fan of Delta-8 THC other than for its wonderful health benefits. And if folks want to relax or enjoy it in an adult use manner recreationally, they should be welcome to do that. But from a dispensary in the correct market, we really do believe that those things belong in adult use and medical markets. Finally, it gets even more dangerous. This THC acetate, which is not an isomer of THC, it is rather an acetate ester of THC, but we're starting to see those products on the market as well because they're being derived originally from a hemp cannabinoid. So just be very aware of these things and protect hemp. You've got to protect the golden goose as you move forward. The golden goose being oilseed, fiber, and non-intoxicating, health-benefiting cannabinoids. That's what hemp is here for, and that's our position in the United States, and that these other intoxicating cannabinoids, whether they have health benefits or not, do belong in the adult use and medical cannabis market. So all of that said, with one foot in front of the other, working together, we are going to deliver on the promise of hemp.
Thank you